Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that Father's Day began when one daughter wanted to honor and remember her dad, and also 200 other fathers who died a year earlier in a tragic mining explosion that killed more than 360 men and boys, leaving 1,000 children fatherless? Learn how the very first Father's Day service was held in 1908 in West Virginia, but it would not be until 1966 when U.S. President Lyndon Johnson issued a proclamation designating Father's Day, the third Sunday in June, as a national holiday.
I mean, we spend over $10 billion every single year on Father's Day.
Oh, easily.
Yeah, and if you look around this weekend, you are going to see, endless displays of hastily wrapped neckties and those world's greatest dad mugs.
Right. Tons of backyard grilling equipment, too.
Exactly. It's entirely routine. It really feels like a holiday that was just engineered in some corporate boardroom to move merchandise between Mother's Day and the 4th of July.
It definitely has that vibe today.
But the truth is, this holiday wasn't invented by a greeting card company. It was actually born out of the deadliest mining disaster in American history.
It's a completely jarring contrast, isn't it?
It really is.
We associate the day with, dad jokes and golf balls, but the historical reality is rooted in this sudden collective grief. To really understand the origins of Father's Day, we have to look past the modern commercialization. We have to examine what happens when an entire community is violently forced to live without fathers.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that is the exact mission for our deep dive today. We are taking the stack of sources you provided, so historical records, sociological data, and even some theological frameworks. And we're tracing how Father's Day evolved from a day of desperate communal mourning into the massive national event it is today.
Yeah, we're looking at the cultural shifts that delayed official recognition for decades, and those weird, bizarre movements that almost erased it entirely.
Right. Plus how modern statistics contrast with the original intent.
Right.
But ultimately, we are going to examine the undeniable divine truth of a father's eternal calling.
Exactly. And to understand the true value of fathers, we first have to look at a moment in history when a community was suddenly forced to live without them.
Which takes us to Fairmont, West Virginia, December 6, 1907.
Yeah, the Monongah mining explosion.
Right. And to this day, it remains the worst mining accident in U.S. history.
The scale of the loss is just, it's difficult to wrap your mind around, especially for a single community.
Yeah.
An explosion ripped through the mine, and in a matter of minutes, more than 360 men and boys were killed.
360 in minutes. And the ripple effect of that instantly left roughly 1,000 children completely fatherless.
It's just devastating.
Try to picture the sheer panic of that scenario. There were no modern social safety nets back then. It wasn't a gradual loss. It was an instant community-wide severing.
Right, totally overnight.
It's like, well, think of it like living in a house where you go about your daily life completely taking for granted the invisible architecture holding the roof up.
Sure.
You don't walk around thanking the load-bearing walls, but if a sudden earthquake just yanks those walls away, the entire structure collapses. You are utterly exposed to the elements.
That invisible architecture is precisely what the community was forced to confront.
Wow.
The shockwave of that disaster left widows and orphans staring at the wreckage, realizing the profound protection and provision that had just vanished.
Yeah.
And it was out of this specific tragedy that the very first Father's Day service emerged. It happened a few months later, on July 5, 1908.
At the Williams Memorial Methodist Episcopal Church in Fairmont.
Exactly, initiated by Grace Golden Clayton.
Now, looking at the sources, Grace had a dual motivation here, Alaire. She was already grieving her own father, who had passed away in 1896, and she wanted a dedicated church service to remember him.
Right.
But the Monongah explosion was the undeniable catalyst that pushed her to actually organize it.
What's fascinating here is a quote we have from Grace from an interview she gave decades later. This was in 1979 to the Fairmont Times.
Okay, what did she say?
She reflected on that period and said, quote, "It was partly the explosion that set me to think how important and loved most fathers are."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She specifically noted the lonely children and heartbroken wives and mothers made orphans and widows in a matter of a few minutes.
She recognized that sudden vacuum. I mean, she talked about how sad and frightening it was to have no father, no husband to turn to during such a dark time.
Which tells us something fundamental about the genesis of this holiday. It did not begin as a celebratory pat on the back.
Right.
It began as a profound awareness of a void. It was an act of mourning. The first Father's Day was society recognizing just how essential a father's role is, but only because the provider and protector had been violently stripped away.
But see, here's what I find puzzling about the timeline in our sources. Grace's memorial in West Virginia was a localized event. It didn't instantly spark an annual nationwide tradition. To see the shift from a local memorial to a national movement, the sources point us to a woman named Sonora Smart Dodd in 1909.
Yes, Sonora is essentially the champion who took the concept of honoring fathers and relentlessly pushed it into the broader cultural consciousness.
And the setting for her realization is fascinating. Sonora is sitting in church in 1909, listening to a sermon dedicated to Mother's Day.
Right.
And as she's hearing all these wonderful, well-deserved praises for mothers, she has this epiphany. She realizes that fathers require the exact same distinct honor.
Because her own father was the bedrock of her life.
Exactly. Her mother had tragically died while giving birth to their sixth child, so her dad stepped up and raised all 6 children entirely alone.
He embodied everything we just discussed. In the face of a massive void, he became the provider, the protector, and the nurturer for 6 children.
So Sonora decides she wants to establish a day specifically to celebrate him and fathers who carry that kind of weight.
Yeah.
She initially pushed for June 5th simply because that was her dad's birthday, but the logistics took a bit longer than she anticipated. So the very first widespread, community-backed Father's Day was ultimately celebrated on June 19th, 1910.
Which happened to be the 3rd Sunday in June.
Right, which is the precedent we still follow today.
Exactly.
But okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because I am having a hard time squaring this next piece of the timeline.
Okay, hit me.
So we have this widespread celebration gaining traction in 1910, and we know Mother's Day was made an official U.S. holiday incredibly quickly.
Right, very fast.
Yet, according to our sources, it wasn't until 1966 that President Lyndon Johnson issued the first presidential proclamation designating the 3rd Sunday in June for fathers. And it took until 1972, under President Richard Nixon, to actually sign a law making Father's Day a permanent official national holiday.
It's wild, isn't it?
That is a massive 62-year gap. Why did society drag its feet for over half a century to officially recognize fathers compared to mothers?
It's a striking delay, for sure. But it highlights how complicated cultural shifts are. If you look at the societal norms of the early 20th century, there was a deeply ingrained paradigm regarding gender roles. Mothering was viewed as inherently nurturing, emotional, and, worthy of sentimental celebration. Fathering, on the other hand, was largely viewed as a silent duty.
Just going to work and coming home.
Exactly. Men were expected to be stoic breadwinners. The idea of a sentimental holiday with flowers and cards for men actually clashed with the era's concept of masculinity.
So society essentially viewed fathers as a utility rather than an emotional pillar.
In many public spheres, yes. So grassroots movements, like the one Sonora Smart Dodd started, they require decades of tireless championing.
Wow.
People like her have to fight community by community, year after year, to change the cultural narrative. Federal legislation rarely leads cultural change. It reacts to it.
Right. The culture has to move first.
Exactly. It took 62 years for the cultural consensus to shift enough that the government finally felt compelled to codify it into law.
They had to do the agonizingly slow work of convincing the country that fathers were equally vital to the emotional equation of a family. And looking at the sources, they almost failed. Father's Day nearly didn't make it to that 1972 finish line.
No, the decades leading up to that were very precarious. The 1920s and 30s in particular presented a massive threat to the holiday.
This detail from the sources completely threw me. During the 1920s and 1930s, a legitimate movement emerged that wanted to abolish both Mother's Day and Father's Day completely.
Yeah, get rid of them both.
They didn't want to get rid of the celebration of parents, but their proposal was to combine them into a single, unified holiday called Parents' Day.
They wanted to consolidate the 2 distinct roles into one efficient package.
Which sounds like a terrible corporate merger.
It really does.
You take 2 completely distinct, deeply meaningful celebrations, one honoring the unique nurturing presence of a mother, and the other honoring the unique protective foundation of a father, and you just water them down.
You blend them into this generic one-size-fits-all event.
Exactly. When you do that, you lose all the specificity. You lose the nuance of what actually makes a father a father.
That is the exact danger of consolidation. It flattens the human experience into something easily digestible, but ultimately strips away the distinct characteristics that make the individual roles meaningful.
Fortunately, that Parents' Day merger completely failed. And ironically, the very thing that helped save Father's Day was a global conflict and, well, the push for commercialization.
Right, World War II.
Yeah, during WWII, advertisers saw a massive opportunity. They realized that championing Father's Day was a highly effective way to honor American troops, since so many of the soldiers deployed overseas were fathers.
It shifted the narrative entirely. Advertisers linked the holiday to patriotism and the sacrifice of the soldier dad.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, that strategic push is largely what cemented Father's Day into the American consciousness and ensured it survived long enough to become law in 1972.
So advertisers basically saved the holiday, which makes a lot of sense when you pivot to the modern statistics provided in our sources. Where exactly does the modern American dad stand today?
The landscape has evolved significantly. Today, there are more than 72 million fathers in the United States.
72 million.
Yep. And if we look past certain cynical cultural stereotypes, the reality is quite robust. 3 out of 4 of those fathers are married and are actively raising 3 or more children under the age of 18.
Wow, that flies in the face of the whole absent attached dad trope.
It absolutely does. Now, on the commercial side, the impact is staggering. Americans spend more than $10 billion on Father's Day gifts annually.
Yeah, the ties and grills.
Exactly. But there is one specific statistic in the sources that completely shifts our paradigm of modern fatherhood. Almost 1 in 5 stay-at-home parents in the U.S. today are dads.
1 in 5. That is incredible.
It really is.
And honestly, it creates a fascinating friction. On one hand, we have this massive $10 billion commercial machine pushing grilling accessories and power tools, which reinforces a very specific traditional stereotype. But on the other hand, the reality on the ground is that 20% of stay-at-home parents are fathers.
This raises an important question about how we view genuine appreciation versus commercialization. It forces us to reconcile the commercial image with the practical reality.
Right.
That 1 in 5 statistic proves that modern fathers are not just distant financial providers checking in at the end of the day. They are deeply, intimately involved in the grueling day-to-day logistics of raising children.
Packing lunches, managing schedules.
Providing continuous emotional support. They are an irreplaceable hands-on presence in the home.
Which proves society has largely moved past the 1920s stoic breadwinner model. The role is hyperactive, it's vital.
Absolutely.
But we need to transition here because the sources you provided don't just examine fatherhood through the lens of history or sociology. They also delve into the foundational, unchanging truth of what fatherhood actually means in the grand scheme of the universe.
Yes, and this is crucial. Our sources include the teachings of Elder D. Todd Christofferson. He approaches fatherhood not as a shifting social construct, but presenting the absolute truth that fatherhood is, fundamentally, an eternal calling.
Right. The text explicitly states that by divine design, fathers are placed in their roles to preside over their families in love and in righteousness.
Yes.
They hold a core responsibility to provide the necessities of life and essential protection for their families.
The teachings frame this not as a cultural expectation that can be voted on or altered by the decade, but as an inherent divine mandate.
So, what does this all mean when we talk about how mothers and fathers coexist? Because Elder Christofferson's text describes a very deliberate balance. It asserts that fathers and mothers are obligated to help one another as equal partners in these complementary duties, but it also draws a hard line. It explicitly states that fathers are unique and irreplaceable.
Right.
It completely rejects that 1920s Parents' Day idea that you can just blend mothering and fathering into a generic, interchangeable blob.
Exactly. The truth here insists that you cannot consolidate them because the roles are fundamentally distinct.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture and trace Elder Christofferson's words back to the very first Father's Day memorial in West Virginia, it casts that tragedy in a whole new light.
How so?
Well, why did the widows and orphans of the Monongah mining disaster feel the loss with such unique devastation? From this perspective, the grief wasn't merely about losing a paycheck.
Oh, I see.
It was because the role of a father, to protect, to provide, to preside in love, is divinely designed and stitched into the very fabric of human existence.
So when a father is removed from the picture, it's not just an empty chair at the dinner table. It's the removal of an essential pillar of the family structure. The design itself is compromised.
Exactly. The immense grief experienced in Monongah was a visceral testament to the fundamental necessity of fathers. The presence of a father is meant to be an enduring, eternal foundation.
That entirely reframes how we should look at this weekend. It forces you to look past the $10 billion in commercial spending and recognize the profound weight of the role itself.
It really does.
So as you are listening to this and mapping out your plans for Father's Day, we want to leave you with some actionable takeaways drawn straight from our sources. The central theme of the practical advice is simply this: make the day about quality time.
It doesn't require extravagant spending or grand gestures.
Not at all. The advice is incredibly grounded. Take your dad camping or fishing. Go swimming or hiking.
Make him an all-star breakfast.
Yes. Host a family game night. Set up a backyard picnic. Fire up that grill. Or honestly, just go out in the driveway and wash his car with him.
Yet, whatever activity you choose, the underlying goal is to express genuine love and gratitude for the tireless, often invisible work he does. A father is meant to be a hero and a role model for life.
And our sources highlight a profound layer to that role model dynamic.
Right. They reference a video poem that explores the unbreakable connection between our earthly fathers and our Heavenly Father.
It's a beautiful comparison.
It posits that earthly dads are positioned here to serve as the closest tangible reflection of ultimate heavenly protection and love.
Which brings us to the final thought we want you to take into your weekend. We've spent this entire deep dive looking at how history, society, and divine design view the role of fathers. But in a modern culture that constantly tries to redefine, consolidate, or simply commercialize family roles, maybe the most radical thing you can do is pause and recognize the distinct, quiet sacrifices of fatherhood for exactly what they are.
Absolutely.
Don't just hand over a hastily wrapped necktie. Take a moment to genuinely acknowledge the unique foundation your father or a father figure has built in your life. Beautifully said.
And then ask yourself this: if earthly fatherhood is an eternal calling meant to mirror the divine, how does the way we actively honor and understand the irreplaceable role of our earthly fathers shape our very capacity to understand our Heavenly Father?
That's a great question to reflect on.
Take that question with you and have a wonderful weekend honoring the fathers in your life.
Thank you for joining us for this day in His story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in His story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.